ஹலோ வியூவர்ஸ், வெல்கம் டு another எபிசோட் ஆஃப் நாலேஜ் சீரீஸ். இன்றைக்கி வந்து நம்மள்ட்ட ஒரு ஸ்பெஷல் கெஸ்ட் ஒருத்தர் வந்திருக்காரு. இந்திய அரசோட முன்னாள் தலைமை பொருளாதார ஆலோசகர் அரவிந்த் சுப்ரமணியன் அவர்கள் இன்றைக்கி சென்னையில் அவரோட புக் லான்ச் ஒன்றுக்காக வந்திருக்காரு. அப்படியே நம்மள்ட்டையும் பேசுகிறதுக்கு டைம் கொடுத்துருக்காரு. ஸோ அவர்கிட்ட பேசி அந்த புக்கை பற்றியும் இந்திய பொருளாதாரத்தை பற்றியும் இன்னொன்று பல விஷயங்களை பேசி தெரிஞ்சுக்கலாம். வெல்கம் டு த ஷோ. ஹலோ சார், இந்த புக்கில் வந்து ப்ரிகாஷியஸ் அப்படின்ற வேர்டை வந்து நீங்கள் ஃபர்ஸ்ட்டு யூஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கீங்க. ஐ ஓப்பன் த கவர் அண்ட் ஐ சா த வேர்ட் ப்ரிகாஷியஸ். இந்த ப்ரிகாஷியஸ்ன்ற வார்த்தை ஏன் இந்தியன் ஸ்டோரிக்கு முக்கியம்னு நினைக்கிறீங்க? வை டிட் யூ சூஸ் இட் டு பி த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் சென்டென்ஸ் தட் எனி ரீடர் இஸ் கோயிங் டு லுக் அட் த புக்?
இந்த புக் நாங்கள் எழுதியிருக்கோமே, ஒன் ஆஃப் த திங்ஸ் அபவுட் த புக் இஸ், இஃப் யூ வாண்ட் டு ஸ்டடி இந்தியா, you should not study only India. Because to understand a country, you have to understand how other countries have also done and to see India against the experience of those countries. So, அந்த perspective-ல பார்த்தேன்னா, how different India is from other countries, and that precocious captures that, how unusual that. So, நான் 3 example கொடுக்குறேன் precocious. ஒன்று, but Devesh must have said, most countries democracy and development happen hand in hand. வந்து 1820ல அமெரிக்காவில் 10% vote பண்ண முடியும். அது எக்கனாமிக் டெவலப்மெண்ட் ஆனதுக்கப்புறம் 20% போக முடியும். இன்னொரு டெவலப்மெண்ட் 30%. And they got final adult franchise only in late. In fact, in the US, only the 1960s did African Americans get full franchise. Another model is Asia. என்னன்னா, நிறைய rapid economic growth, 6%, 7%, Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan. And அது அடுத்த முதல்ல economic development, முதல்ல growth, அதுக்கப்புறம் democracy kicks in.
Okay.
Yeah? And of course, in some cases, democracy doesn't kick in at all, like in China. Or even Singapore, where there's democracy, but people wonder. இந்தியாவில் என்னன்னா, முதல்ல democracy, அப்புறம் development. And it is not just a characterization, because that had a very big impact on how development itself shaped because of democracy coming first. Another example is precocious. எல்லா countries successful இருக்குதுன்னா, முதல்ல agriculture, அப்புறம் agriculture-லேருந்து people will move to manufacturing and then to services. இந்தியாவில் straight agriculture, manufacturing ஜாஸ்தி கிடையாது, services, straight services. And so some of that to services was high-tech services, but very few people, as I said just now, very few people get IT services.
High value, but few people.
Few people. Very, very, very few. That's why it can't be inclusive. So, நடுவில் நம்ம மேனுஃபேக்சரிங் பண்ணல. மேனுஃபேக்சரிங் பண்ணலன்னா ஜாப் ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டிஸ் கிடையாது. ஜாப் ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டினா, India is not as rich and hasn't done as well as China. So, that's a precaution. மூணாவது அடுத்த precautions என்னன்னா, again, if you look at countries around the world, especially successful countries, primary education முதல்ல பண்றாங்க. First they emphasize primary education. So எல்லாம் schooling எல்லாம். நம்ம இது என்ன, முதல்ல spend a lot on higher education and we neglected primary education. So there's also precociousness in terms of what are the policy choices that the government made and how different it was from other countries. So that's the also மூணாவது அர்த்தம். Democracy for development ஒரு அர்த்தம், services before manufacturing ரெண்டாவது அர்த்தம், and what are the priority choices, அது மூணாவது அர்த்தம். And since this many chapters so that's why precocious was important to emphasize.
So now talking about primarily the services before manufacturing, we have a demographic dividend. That's how we are defining the young population that's coming into the workforce every year. So இவ்வளோ பேர் யங் ஏஜில் உள்ள வராங்க. Are we making it look like a dividend, or are we making it look like a disaster? What exactly is happening?
See, demographic dividend, first thing to understand is demographic dividend என்னன்னா, lots of young people in the labor force.
Yes.
Yeah? But people tended to say, arey, demographic dividend na paradise. But demographic dividend never was destiny. It created opportunity. But to exploit that and realize that opportunity, you had to be able to provide jobs. நம்ம என்னன்னா demographic dividendல Korea, Taiwan, China, Japan, when they had the demographic dividend, they were able to provide jobs. So the dividend became a boon. Number demographic profile changed, but job opportunities கொடுக்க முடியலையே. That's the sense in which the dividend may not be fully realized. That's so jobs for 600, 700 million. அதுதான் focus இருக்கும். We haven't been successful so far.
Okay. As a country, what should we do to exploit this opportunity? What do you think what are the steps that as a country should?
If history is any guide, the only way countries have provided jobs at that level is by doing manufacturing. அது நம்ம பண்ண முடியல for various reasons which we talk about in the book. But இப்போ லாஸ்ட் சான்ஸ் இருக்கு. China +1 opportunity வருது. Foxconn தமிழ்நாடுக்கு வந்திருக்கா, நிறைய Winstar, lots of companies have come and they're creating jobs for women and jobs for, because in many of these jobs, நிறைய ஜாப்லாம் நம்ம தமிழ்நாடு men don't want to work there because, either they're getting benefits from the state or they want to work in air conditioned இது அது மாதிரி. So to get that, you need either migrants from other states or just more and more jobs for women. And women Tamil Nadu does the best in 40% of all manufacturing employment in India is Tamil Nadu. Yeah. And most of that is women. So other than if you can provide those jobs for women, but next stage because labor is cheaper in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, all that investment must go to those places. Because Tamil Nadu people don't want to work because they're relatively well off. Those manufacturing wages are not good enough. But UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, nariya irkale people who will be able to work, and that's what will make that investment profitable.
Okay. And so what about the counter view that there is not space for another manufacturing giant like China?
So, அது வந்து very good point. But நம்பரை பாருங்க. China வந்து 50% global market share. India 3%.
Okay.
Now, அந்த 50% இருக்கே, it has to go down. Because China இப்போ manufacturing wages $10,000. $10,000. அப்படின்னா it is becoming more and more unprofitable to produce, if a t-shirt. If you want to employ a Chinese worker and pay $10,000, number Indian $2,000. So it should be relatively profitable to make it here. So ava 50% லேந்து 30%, number 2 லேந்து 10, 12, 15%. So the world doesn't have to accommodate another China because China is going to come down. You only have to fill in the space vacated by China. So the world is not as if China 50% of India is also adilla. China has to vacate space and India. So then the world doesn't have to absorb another China. The world will absorb, just what China is. Other people, what China was doing, other countries like India should do.
So you've worked with governments. I mean, you've worked with a lot of public institutions and worked with the public policy. Do you think economics is catering to the subject of economics is catering to real needs of the people? அதாவது இப்போ GDP as a number, how comprehensive is it to measure anything that people experience, and how good is it as a measure? And what are the nuances that you have experienced working with government, if you can explain these things?
See, முதல் இது வந்து நீங்க வந்து ரொம்ப நிறைய மார்க்சிஸ்ட் லெஃப்டிஸ்ட் பீப்புள் படிச்சுன்னு இருக்கீங்க. GDP, two things I'll say about GDP. One, it does actually measure how much incomes people are earning. Of course, it doesn't measure the distribution of income, but it measures what the average person is earning. So it is a measure of thing. That's one. But the second thing is, all the indicators that you care about, health, education, whatever, they are correlated with GDP. So GDP vandana, those other indicators will also improve in a variety of different ways. So don't underestimate the value of GDP. Obviously it's not perfect, but it is highly correlated with all the other things that you also care about. So we must measure it. We must be careful about how we interpret it, but we must measure it correctly also. So
When you're looking at a scale of 1.3 billion people and you're saying a GDP number to define the well-being of people, does it make good sense?
see, the thing is that obviously you want to supplement that with other measures. So in India, for example, you care a lot about the poor people because there are lots of poor people at the levels. So there you will have to see, what is the poverty, how are those people doing, etc. So, but GDP is still giving you valuable information about what the average person is earning. And your policies in a democracy, remember, if you improve the average person, that means you've taken along at least 50% of the population with you. So, your electoral chances statistically, exactly. But, it's one measure, but it's a very useful measure, not a perfect measure. Working in government, the best job I ever did was working with government. No other job I've done. Maybe even writing this book, maybe not as satisfying as being chief of because the opportunity that you get to influence policy is just unique. And only in government do you get the opportunity to influence the lives of so many people, because the only thing that operates at scale is government. No NGO can operate at scale, no company can operate at scale. And the government is there. And so if you can work with government, shape, economic advisors only provide inputs. The real
my question was going to be how is the influence of government on you?
No, that also transformed me, because how to understand the world, how to understand how policies are made, how to understand how decisions are made, and therefore how should you, not just what should you do, but how should you provide the advice, you learn from interacting with being in government. So it's just the best job I ever did. And so when I left the government, I said, if all Hindus believe in rebirth, so if I'm born again, I want to be chief economic advisor of all the state governments in India.
Okay.
So at the moment I'm doing Tamil Nadu, and now Telangana also. I've just been appointed to the Economic Advisory Council of Tamil Nadu, and I've also been helping other states like Punjab. So that dream is also coming partially true now.
So looking at India's economy in general, fiscal deficit is very high comparatively. However, we don't see many financial crises as we see in other countries or other big economies. Why is it so? And is there something that we are missing in terms of data? Are we looking at something else?
See, I think there are two different questions. One is the question of why, despite having high deficits, we've not experienced. But the other question Dr. Subbarao asked is the opposite question. Just because we have lower deficits doesn't mean we are immune to crises. So I think both have to be addressed. So our explanation in the book for why is that, see, India, I think bottom line is investors think that India will not default on its debt. And the safety that people have, the confidence that people have. Because 1991, when there were doubts about India's ability to pay, you know what India did to reassure investors? Gold in the India, physically transferred, say, yes, we will never default. So that investors have that assurance. What Dr. Subbarao is saying is also very valid. Just because you have lower deficit and debt doesn't mean, because, see, foreign capital that comes in is always more comfortable with advanced economies than emerging market countries for various reasons. So that is why we have to be ultra careful. And the second thing is that even though our fiscal deficit debt may be low, because we are borrowing a lot, number one, the export are less than our imports. So Nariya number, borrow from the rest of the world. Under borrowing, if it leaves, it creates a vulnerability. So even if your domestic debt is low, because foreigners come and go, and when they leave, for example, rupee has been coming down. Why? Because foreign capital is leaving. But today it's not a problem because it's leaving gradually. But there could be circumstances like happened in 91 when investors suddenly they say, for whatever reason, I don't have confidence in India. Dramatic anana, you can have a full-fledged crisis. So you always have to be conservative and make sure that these things don't happen.
Okay. So reduce the risk of a default as
Exactly.
well.
That's a kind of resilience, man.
Yes. Thank you for spending your time with us.
Thanks, sir.